In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. Then God said, "Let there be light." Out of darkness, we came into the light. Our world was illuminated. There became visibility and color, and in the place of chaos, order. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. This past Wednesday was a special day. January 6th is what is known as the major feast of the Epiphany. In the life of our church, Epiphany is the feast of the Great Awakening, the Great Illumination. It is the moment we realize that God is not just the God of the Hebrew people, but indeed, when the people from the Far East arrive, it is made clear that He is the God for all the people. It is an expansive, sudden realization that God is grander than we once realized, and that His hope and His salvation and His loving hand is one that is outstretched to all of humanity. But not all epiphanies come from serene imagery. This past Wednesday, I believe our nation likewise had an epiphany. As we saw anger and violence descend upon our nation's Capitol building, we collectively had an epiphany that this is where our divisive rhetoric leads us. This is what happens when those entrusted to influence public opinion play games with democracy. This is what happens when we revert to name-calling, believe in grand conspiracy, empower violence and hate and selfishness. This is what happens when we do not, as our baptismal covenant commands, respect the dignity of every human being. This is not a game. In a game, people compete and one side wins and the other side loses. But democracy is not about winners and losers. Rather, it is about the collective governance of a people, moving a nation forward together. In a democracy, what we say, how we conduct ourselves, the ways in which we empower people matters. I do not use my pulpit as a political backdrop. You who know me know I truly believe in the diversity of public opinion. It is what I believe makes our nation great. But we are only great if we truly value and respect the people with whom we disagree. This is not a game. The epiphany that came that night so many years ago was that God's embrace was big enough for the whole world. No longer were there winners and losers in the game of life, but rather all became beloved children of God. So if God's embrace is big enough for the whole world, surely our embrace can at least be big enough for all Americans. We must acknowledge, as Lincoln once said in a much more divisive time, that we are not enemies but friends. Though passion may have strained it, it must not break bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will swell when touched again, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. We must reclaim the moral character that made this nation great. And we should demand nothing less from our leaders, because this is not a game. Now, the Epiphany was not the only holy day we see this week. Today is known as the baptism of our Lord. So in the aftermath of this week, I think it is worth asking, what do we as Christians do after we engage in these great revelations, these great epiphanies of life? Well, in our faith, we bathe. We wash ourselves clean of the past through the confession of sins, through repentance of our complicity, acknowledgement of our ignorance, and sorrow of our brokenness. And despite our sins, we emerge from that water claimed by God and thus worthy of His love and forgiveness. We are seen as God's children, God's beloved. It is time for us to begin once again living into our baptismal covenant. It is time for us to respect the dignity of every human being. It's time for us to look away from our differences and instead acknowledge the image of God that is placed upon every soul that we encounter. It is time to walk the way of love as seen through the example of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We must learn again how to live and converse and grow as a society with those whom we disagree. While the people who defiled our capital will have to answer for the wrong they have done, they will not have to answer to me. And they will not have to answer to you. They will have to answer to our nation's justice and to God's justice. But as for us, it is time for us to quit pointing our fingers and begin acting as the change we hope to see in others. Remember, we live in the United States, and bullying never unites. Over the next year, I want to emphasize Mediator's tradition as a place where differences can come together. I want us to learn and grow our ability to speak across the divide. I want to be known for our openness to diverse thought and conversation. I want to be the place where there are debates, not arguments, disagreements, not division, hope, not fear. We can be a shining example of how to appreciate and love our neighbors for their differences, be those differences politics or faith, race, culture, sexuality, or whatever we previously thought separated us from them. We shall learn and we shall love. Now, I do not suggest conversing with those whom we disagree is an easy task. Rather, it is quite uncomfortable. But as your priest, let me remind you, God never promised your comfort. Rather, a deep hunger for love. Just ask Paul or Peter or Moses or Abraham. Just ask Jesus. The way of love can be quite difficult. But you chose to be a Christian. And this is what your God demands, that you act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And day by day, act by act, we will help realize the kingdom of God here on earth through justice, through mercy and humbleness, love of God and our neighbor. This is how we will come out of darkness and into a great light. There was evening, and there was morning, the first day.